There is this really specific moment that so many parents or teachers, really anyone who cares for kids, remembers with just absolute clarity.
Oh, I think I know exactly the one you mean.
Right. Like imagine you're at a local food bank, or maybe you're out on a Saturday morning doing a park cleanup, or even just, packing meal boxes for a neighbor who hit a rough patch.
Yeah.
And your kid, who, let's be honest, has probably been complaining about missing screen time or just being super distracted.
Don't they do?
Right, as kids do. But then they suddenly stop. Like they actually look at another person's situation. Maybe they see the worn out shoes of the person getting the food, or they just notice the sheer number of empty pantries in their own town.
And you see it hit them.
Yes. You can physically see something shift in their face. And it isn't pity, it's recognition. And that quiet, tiny fraction of a second, that is the literal birth of lifelong compassion.
It really is an incredibly profound shift to witness because what you're seeing in that exact moment is the translation of a completely abstract concept into a deeply felt, lived reality.
Like it suddenly clicks.
Exactly. You are watching a neurological bridge being built in real time. It's connecting the child's internal world directly to the external reality of another human being.
Wow. And that bridge, that exact connection, is what we are deep diving into today.
It's such a great topic.
It really is. So we're pulling from this insightful body of work today. We've got a core article on teaching kids compassion through volunteering, alongside this really fascinating strategic brief from a family-focused brand called Play Print Pals.
They do some really interesting stuff with interactive workbooks.
Yeah, they do. So our mission today is to unpack the mechanics of how we guide children from just, basic emotional sensitivity to genuine active empathy.
Which is a huge leap.
It's a massive leap. And critically, we're going to talk about how to avoid the modern trap of performative helping.
Oh, the resume-building volunteering.
Exactly. Because whether you are raising a child, teaching a classroom, or, just intensely curious about human psychology, understanding how the brain learns to genuinely care for others is a brilliant shortcut to understanding human nature itself.
I completely agree.
So let's start at the biological beginning. A lot of us just kind of operate under this assumption that kindness is a baked-in personality trait. Like you either get the nice kid gene or you don't.
Right. People think it's just a lottery.
Yeah. But from a developmental standpoint, compassion is actually a learned skill, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And honestly, treating it like this innate genetic lottery, it really does a disservice to how adaptable the human brain actually is.
So we can train it.
We have to train it. If you look at the developmental psychology behind this, empathy exists on this long, really complex spectrum. We do see the biological seeds of it early on, though.
Like in babies.
Yeah, exactly. Infants who are just a few months old will often show signs of severe distress when they hear another baby cry in a nursery. Researchers actually call this emotional contagion.
Oh, that makes sense. I always think of that like catching a yawn, but with intense feelings.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
Right, like it's an involuntary reflex. It doesn't necessarily mean the baby actively cares about the other baby's well-being. It just means their nervous system is matching the frequency of the room.
Right. The primitive brain is just responding to auditory cues of distress. It's a reflex. But to move from that reflexive contagion to actual empathy, that requires a massive cognitive leap.
And when does that usually happen?
It begins to solidify in early elementary school. Psychologists call this milestone theory of mind.
Theory of mind.
Yeah, and it's this watershed realization for a child that other people have entirely different internal experiences. They have separate databases of memories, unique emotional states.
So it's that sudden realization of, oh, wow, you are a whole other independent entity in there. And you might be sad even if I'm currently happy.
Precisely. You get it.
Yeah.
But this is where the psychology gets really challenging. And honestly, it's where a lot of well-meaning adults get stuck.
How so?
Well, there's this massive daunting gap between recognizing that someone else is sad and actually caring enough to intervene.
Yeah.
We refer to this as the action gap.
The action gap.
Yeah. Without guided, deliberate practice, empathy just remains a passive internal sensation. The brain registers the distress, but the prefrontal cortex just hasn't mapped the behavioral pathway to actually do anything about it.
Okay, wait. So it's like it's the difference between hearing a fire alarm and actually knowing the evacuation route.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Like the alarm is the empathy. It's the biological distress. But active compassion is the motor function, you know? It's the learned practice route to safety.
Exactly.
You can't just sit a kid down in a classroom and lecture them about the building's blueprints. They have to physically walk the halls.
Right, they have to run the drill.
Which brings up a major point in our sources. Lecturing kids about generosity is notoriously ineffective.
Right.
Like, it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work because verbal instruction lacks visceral weight. I
Hmm.
mean, when you lecture a child about being generous, you're appealing to their logic.
And kids aren't exactly known for their logic.
Exactly. Human beings, especially young ones, are not purely logical creatures. We are experiential learners. A lecture doesn't give a child visceral proof that their effort actually matters to the world.
But volunteering does.
Yes. If that same child spends an afternoon sorting donated winter coats for families experiencing hardship, they are thrust into a tangible reality.
They can actually feel the weight of the coats.
They feel the coats. They see the direct, visible impact of their physical actions on another human being's dignity.
And this lived experience provides something that, frankly, modern childhood is desperately short on, which is an unstructured window outside of their own self-focus.
Which is so important.
Right. And let's be fair to kids. They are supposed to be self-focused, right? They're actively constructing their own identities.
Oh, completely. A healthy amount of self-focus is entirely developmentally normal and necessary. Volunteering doesn't seek to shame them for that self-focus.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah, rather, it gently interrupts it. It forces perspective taking. If you're helping out at a local animal shelter, your brain has to perform this complex simulation. You have to actively imagine what a frightened, abandoned animal might be feeling in that cage.
And that mental simulation basically stretches the bounds of their theory of mind.
Exactly. It stretches that muscle.
And volunteering essentially places them in a completely different environment to practice that simulation, which actually perfectly mirrors the philosophy Alison Gopnik discusses in her book, The Gardener and the Carpenter.
Yes, that is such a foundational text for this.
It really is. It's one of the main books referenced in our materials today. Gopnik basically argues against the Carpenter approach to parenting.
Right, the carpenter being the one who tries to force the wood into a specific shape.
Exactly. You rigidly try to shape, chisel, and control a child into a specific predetermined outcome. Like, forcing them to be kind through strict rules.
And Gopnik's work is essential here because the alternative to the carpenter is, of course, the gardener.
The garden?
Right. A gardener doesn't pull on a plant stem to force it to grow faster. And they definitely don't micromanage the roots.
They just create the right conditions.
They simply create a rich, nurturing, secure environment where the plant can naturally thrive. Empathy requires a secure emotional environment to take root.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, so by engaging in community service, you are essentially planting the child in a different, highly nutrient-dense patch of soil for an afternoon.
Yeah.
You're allowing the environment to do the teaching.
That environmental design is just so crucial. And actually, it's something I noticed running through the strategic brief for Playprint Pals.
Oh, their design choices, right?
Yeah, so they design these interactive, printable workbooks for families. And their entire philosophy is rooted in creating a specific emotional environment. The brief explicitly directs their designers to use warm corals, deep teals, and golden yellows.
That's very intentional.
It is. They actively avoid cold, clinical, corporate blues or grays.
Well, visual cues are deeply tied to psychological safety. Playprint Pals understands that compassion cannot be taught in a sterile academic setting
Right, it shouldn't feel like a standardized test.
or a corporate training seminar. By utilizing grounding micro-activities and reflective questions rather than just walls of text, they are cultivating that exact gardener environment Gopnik talks about.
They're creating a space where a child feels safe enough to explore vulnerable feelings.
Exactly.
But we do have to talk about how we safely introduce these experiences. Because you can't just, drop a 4-year-old into a soup kitchen and expect them to suddenly grasp the nuances of systemic poverty.
Definitely not.
You're just going to overwhelm their nervous system. The sources really emphasize the need for scaffolding. You have to match the activity to the developmental stage.
Scaffolding is everything here.
Right. And what I find fascinating isn't just the specific activities, but the overarching arc of childhood autonomy, like how it changes as they age.
The progression of autonomy is honestly the secret engine behind all of this. I mean, in the toddler and preschool years, you aren't tripped to teach complex moral philosophy.
Right.
You are utilizing basic associative learning. When a 3-year-old helps you water plants in a community garden, the scale of the work is entirely irrelevant to the community.
Yeah, they're probably just making mud.
Exactly. But it is highly relevant to the child's brain. You are building neurochemical associations. They learn that the act of helping others is tethered to feelings of safety, connection, and parental warmth.
So when my toddler is splashing water out of a watering can, they aren't really volunteering in the traditional sense. They're just absorbing the family rhythm. It's just
Yes.
about establishing the vibe.
It is about neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
You are building the neural pathways of a habit before they even possess the vocabulary to know it's a habit.
Oh, wow.
And as they transition into middle childhood-like early elementary school, their brains are ready to grasp cause and effect.
Okay, so how does that change the approach?
Well, this is where adults must explicitly bridge the action gap we talked about. You say, we are putting these specific cans in this box so that a family in our neighborhood has dinner tonight.
Got it. You connect their physical action to a concrete human outcome,
Exactly.
which naturally sets the stage for the teenage years. And this is where the developmental need for autonomy just skyrockets.
Oh, teenagers.
Yeah, teenagers fundamentally crave independence, right? They want real weighty responsibility. They need to push back against the world to see who they are.
They really do. And if you force a teenager into a parent-assigned volunteer activity, you will almost certainly trigger defiance or apathy.
You'll just get eye rolls.
Endless eye rolls. To cultivate genuine compassion at this stage, adults basically must step back and allow teenagers to choose their own causes.
Give them the reins.
Right. Whether it is environmental activism, animal rights, or food insecurity. Giving them agency over the where and the how strengthens their intrinsic motivation far more effectively than any mandate ever could.
You know, this maps so perfectly onto the arguments Michelle Borba makes in her book, UnSelfie.
Yes. UnSelfie. Great book.
It really is. The subtitle is Why Empathetic Kids Succeed in Our All About Me World. And Borba tackles this macro problem head on. She talks about the measurable, documented decline of empathy in recent decades.
It's a real issue.
Because we are living in a culture that relentlessly promotes self-promotion and individual branding.
Borba's research is sobering, but it is highly actionable. What she provides in UnSelfie is basically a framework for countering that massive cultural tide.
How does she suggest we do that?
A key part of her framework is moral courage, giving kids the practical tools and the stage-by-stage perspective-taking skills to actually stand up for others rather than just passively observing.
So you counter the all-about-me culture by giving them genuine agency to solve problems they actually care about.
Exactly. You give them the power to make a real difference.
But here is where we hit the dark side of teenage agency. And honestly, this is probably the most dangerous trap modern parents face.
The performative aspect.
Yes. Right around those high school years, volunteering often stops being about empathy entirely. It mutates into resume building.
It becomes a transaction.
It becomes about the college applications, the National Honor Society requirements, or, the carefully curated social media posts. We enter the era of performative volunteering.
This is perhaps the single most significant concern among developmental psychologists today regarding community service. We have inadvertently gamified compassion.
Gamified compassion, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. When schools or parents turn service activities into this hollow exercise in appearance management, it completely short-circuits the development of genuine empathy.
Because teenagers have incredibly highly attuned hypocrisy meters.
Oh, they spot it from a mile away.
They absorb the underlying emotional tone of an event instantly. So if the unspoken goal of a park cleanup is simply to get a flattering photo for Instagram or just to log hours on a spreadsheet, what is the neurological takeaway for that teenager?
The psychological takeaway is disastrous. They internalize that the primary purpose of helping others is just external validation.
Right.
And worse, they learn to view other people's genuine struggles and hardships merely as props for their own personal success narrative.
Ooh.
It completely degrades the humanity of the person they are supposedly helping.
Which is the exact opposite of empathy. You've essentially commodified their kindness.
You have.
So how do we actively dismantle this? The sources outline a few highly specific strategies to keep the focus rooted in genuine empathy. And it starts with shifting the focus from the mechanical task to the human dignity involved.
Right. Sorting cans for 3 hours is a purely mechanical task. If you don't contextualize it, the brain just treats it like a boring chore.
Just another job to do.
You have to take the time to discuss who is receiving this food. And you must do it while fiercely protecting their dignity. We are not making a spectacle of anyone's hardship.
We are acknowledging a shared human vulnerability. But the strategy that really threw me for a loop and honestly challenged everything I thought I knew about parenting is the warning against overpraising the act.
Ah, the praise trap.
The materials explicitly advise against telling kids, you are such a good person for doing this,
Yeah.
which is wild to me because my immediate instinct when I see a kid doing a good deed is to shower them with praise. I want them to feel great about it.
Of course you do. It's a natural instinct.
But Poe Bronson and Ashley Merriman, in their book Nurture Shock, argue that this kind of praise is actually destructive. Why is praising the act a bad thing?
Well, nurture shock is brilliant precisely because it forces us to look at the empirical evidence regarding praise rather than just trusting our parental instincts.
Right.
When you rely heavily on identity-based praise like telling a child you are a good person, you are unwittingly manipulating their dopamine response. You shift their motivation entirely from intrinsic to extrinsic.
Wait, really? So instead of doing the right thing because they genuinely care about the person suffering, they're doing it simply to get the dopamine hit of adult approval.
Exactly. They become dependent on the applause. And identity-based praise creates this terrible fragility.
How do you mean?
Well, if their core identity is tied to being the good kid who helps, what happens when they fail to help? Or when they just feel selfish, as all humans naturally do sometimes.
They feel like a bad person.
Exactly. The psychology shows we need to eliminate the judgment, even positive judgment, and utilize process praise and reflection instead.
Okay, so you prompt them to recognize their own internal state. Like instead of handing them a verbal trophy, you say, hey, I noticed you spent a lot of time making sure the fragile items were packed carefully on top of the box. What made you decide to do that?
Yes. Notice what that question accomplishes. It forces the child to articulate their own internal empathy.
Right, they have to think about their own thought process.
They have to trace their cognitive steps back to the moment they imagined the recipient opening the box. You're reinforcing the neural pathway of compassion rather than the neural pathway of seeking applause.
That is a phenomenal pivot. And it ties directly into another really difficult strategy for keeping empathy genuine, allowing kids to sit with uncomfortable emotions.
This is a tough one for parents.
It is. When kids volunteer, they are going to encounter suffering. They might see profound homelessness for the first time or witness the physical toll of an illness. And our absolute base instinct as adults is to throw protective bubble wrap around them.
We just want to fix it.
We want to rush in and say, don't be sad, it's all going to be okay.
But shielding them from that sadness actively stunts their moral growth.
Oh, wow.
Yes. The cognitive friction of sadness, the deep discomfort of witnessing inequality, that is the exact soil where empathy grows.
Wow.
If we constantly jump in to soothe away their discomfort, we're basically telling them that negative emotions are dangerous and should be avoided at all costs.
Which just makes them turn away from suffering.
Exactly. Instead, we have to let them sit in that discomfort, validate it, and gently talk through it.
Which brings us to the ultimate bridge between having an experience and actually learning from it, which is reflection.
Yes, reflection is key.
Without reflection, an activity is just an activity. It just kind of fades into the background noise of childhood.
Reflection is the mechanism that locks the learning into long-term memory, and it doesn't require a formal sit-down lecture.
No one wants that.
No one. A simple, organic 5-minute chat in the car on the ride home can deepen the impact immensely. Just asking questions like, what surprised you the most today? Or, was there a moment that felt really unfair?
This is where the Play Print Pals approach really shines as a practical model. Even if you aren't using their specific workbooks, the concept of a grounding journal prompt is incredibly effective.
Very true.
Just having a child complete the sentence, someone I met today felt, forces them to practice that theory of mind all over again.
It solidifies that cognitive leap. But it's also really important to note that families do not need to rely exclusively on formal, organized volunteer events to build these reflective practices.
Right, because for many families, dedicating a whole Saturday to a soup kitchen simply isn't feasible due to work schedules or resources.
Empathy doesn't only happen on weekends wearing a matching volunteer t-shirt.
I love that.
Everyday alternatives are just as vital, if not more so, because they establish compassion as a baseline family rhythm.
Like what kind of everyday alternatives?
Micro-interactions. Checking on a friend who seemed unusually quiet at school, writing a quick card for an elderly neighbor who hasn't been out of their house lately, stepping in to help a stressed sibling without being asked or expecting a reward.
It basically creates a family culture where noticing others and responding with care isn't a special event. It's just the default operating system. Like, this is just how we move through the world.
And it's the consistency of that message, the relentless everyday repetition of noticing others, that rewires the brain, not the grandiosity of a single, highly photographed gesture.
We have covered a tremendous amount of psychological ground today. I mean, we started with the biological reality that infants are wired for emotional contagion, but they require the lived, tactile experience of helping to cross the action gap.
Yes.
We examined the necessity of letting children grow from absorbing the simple vibe of helping as toddlers to demanding the autonomy to pick their own causes as teenagers.
And we unpack the insidious nature of performative volunteering.
Right. And how identity-based praise, as discussed in Nurture Shock, can actually commodify kindness and destroy intrinsic motivation, which is huge.
Massive.
We looked at Alison Gopnik's Gardner and Carpenter framework to understand why creating a secure, reflective environment is far more effective than rigid lecturing.
Much like the warm design philosophy of Playprint Pals.
Exactly. And we explored Michelle Borba's UnSelfie, realizing that giving kids genuine agency is the antidote to our individualistic culture.
Yeah.
These 3 books really are a complete toolkit for anyone listening.
They really are. And, as we synthesize all of these sources, there is one final, almost hidden implication in the research that I think completely shifts the paradigm of why we do this.
Oh, what is that?
Well, we spend an extraordinary amount of time reading these developmental books, agonizing over strategies, and putting all this energy into worrying about how to teach children compassion.
Right, it's exhausting.
It is, but perhaps engaging in these daily family rhythms, choosing not to shield ourselves from uncomfortable emotions, and asking these deeply reflective questions is actually the universe's most effective method for healing our own adult cynicism.
Wait. Oh, wow.
Think about it. As adults, our neural pathways often become hardened by stress, disappointment, and the sheer pace of modern life.
Yeah, we get jaded.
We do. We think we are just engaged in the act of raising children who care. But if we truly lean into these practices with them, maybe they are actually re-raising us.
Yes, that brings us right back to that opening image at the food bank, doesn't it?
It does.
That moment your kid looks up, their face shifts, and they recognize another person's humanity. Maybe the real reason that specific moment sticks with us so vividly and hits us so hard in the chest is because it wakes us up, too.
It reminds us of a connection we forgot we had.
Beautifully said. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking those big questions, keep looking for those aha moments in your own life, and we will catch you next time.